Hello, David. Good to see you, and hello, everyone.
Yes, yeah, nice to see you. Maybe James, we can start by you introducing yourself and tell us what you do.
Sure. So my name is James, the founder of DFG Digital Finance Group. So I basically started this company back to 2015, focused on the investment in the crypto industry. So we do equity investment first, investing in a company like LedgerX, Brave, Circle, Repeal, K, Coin, a few others. And then, we started shifting our focus and investing into tokens, including the protocol like Polkadot, Near, Solana, Avalanche, and a few others, and also being investing to the application level of things as well. Whether it's DeFi or NFT or whatever, we will invest as long as the quality of the project is good. So overall speaking, we have in combination of equity and the tokens, we have invested into more than 100 different kind of decent projects in the industry.
Maybe do you mind giving us a bit of a background of how you got started, how you got into the crypto space?
Sure, happy to do that. So I actually start trading crypto back to 2013. It's pretty early stage. So at that time it's all about Bitcoin. There's Litecoin as well. Basically you can only trade 2 coins. So I start trading a little bit and get some profit. And then I start to dig into this and think this is really something which is super interesting and may change the financial industry in the future because I'm come from a financial background. I guess, then I feel like the best way for me to fit into the industry is become an investor and a supporter, entrepreneur to make the industry better. So I decided to start DFG and start making investment, and that's basically the background about how I started DFG back to 2013 to 2015.
Right. I think also a lot of us are quite familiar with now what you've been able to do with LedgerX and what just happened with with the FTX acquisition. But just before we get in there, maybe give us also a good idea of LedgerX, its early beginnings, challenges, and how you got it to where it is now.
It's pretty early. I think it's in somewhere between March and April 2017. So I started talking to Paul and Judy, the two co-founder of LedgerX at that time, about investment. They are raising Series B at that time, so we are putting more than $10 million into that round, basically leading that round. We think because at that time they are still waiting for the approval for licensing from CFTC. The reason why we make investment is like at that time it's pretty early stage, basically very few people talking about the regulation at the time. But we think once you offer a CeFi product with a custody, then you have to be legit, you have to get a license, right? Otherwise it will be very, very chaotic, and there's no way for the platform to protect the interest of the customer. So I mean the trend of all the CeFi business in the future is being licensed and kind of then become bigger. So that's why we make the investment into LedgerX, because we already see that back to 2017, and we think this is a really good opportunity because there are so few licenses issued by CFTC about the derivative trading platform. There are still only 5 right now. So I guess Binomial and the area sector the license after LedgerX. So LedgerX is actually one of the first 3 kind of platform which got licensed from CFTC. So that's why we are being pretty bullish on that project at that time and make a pretty big investment. And we continually make the investment in Series C round and leading that round in 2019, because at that time I think LedgerX is not only a licensed option trading platform, but with great data, right? There's a lot of trading volume, and also Ledger Prime, which is the founder of LedgerX, doing pretty well at the time. So we continue making investment support LedgerX. They have a few plans to expand to other jurisdictions to have more products. So that's why we also support at that time. And then I think early this year, FTX basically same calls to SAC about the deal, and we think it's probably better for because FTX has been so successful about operating probably the largest derivative trading platform in the world. So we think this is probably a win-win deal for everybody. So I guess for LedgerX itself, it's probably need a much bigger or much experienced company to operating it, then FTX would probably best choice, right? But for FTX side, it's probably makes sense for them to expand to US, to get license, expand to US, and operating their business there. So I guess it's basically for us, we are early stage investor, and we're happy to get some return on our investment. So it's basically a win-win situation for everybody. So that's why when Sam calls to SEC, and I think the board agreed on pretty quickly, and then we were able to close this deal. So that's basically, I guess, the history of why I started making investment, and why FTX deal is being very, very smooth, and we just did that.
Yeah, again, that was quite impressive, and it's nice to sort of have that kind of a background on how you got LedgerX to where it is now. But again, right now we know that regulation is a big deal right now, I think globally. Do you mind telling us about the operating environment in the United States right now? How have you been able to work around the space right now?
Yeah, I guess it's a very good question. Regulation is definitely an important thing. I guess what from my understanding, CeFi is still different than DeFi, right? If you're operating a centralized platform, then you have to be fully regulated. That's without a doubt in any jurisdiction. So that's definitely something you need to get. And I predict in the future there will be much bigger license kind of CeFi platform. And for these kind of unregulated platform, although they are big right now, maybe. But if they fail to get a license, or they are not able to be legit, then they probably will disappear probably in the next few years. That's my prediction. But on the other hand, if you got a totally decentralized platform like protocols, or like applications, DeFi applications, then it's probably good to regulation to kind of being lose a little bit of condition on that score. Basically, you are not doing custody for the people's asset. People just using their cryptos in their wallet and use your service, right? So it's not like you're doing custody. So there's not a lot of liability for the platform to the users. It's up to the user whether you want to choose this service or not. So I guess it takes some time for the regulation to fully dig into the details of these kind of DeFi or protocols, and see whether that is legit or not. I mean, the regulation will come, but it's still different than the CeFi platform. I guess once regulation take a detailed look at it, it will be much mature about how things will move forward in the future. So I guess on the protocol side, there's only CFTC already give Bitcoin a definition of it's a commodities. I mean, Ethereum probably the next, then it will come from other protocols. I mean, from my understanding, it still takes time for the government to take a detailed look at everything, then give more clear definition about how to regulate these things in the future. Overall speaking, I think everything is positive. There's no very negative regulation in the world. I mean, my understanding is like basically most of the jurisdictions is still very positive about crypto, and it's good. My understanding is it's good for the regulation to come and make the industry much bigger in the future.
Great. Now, as a company, I know that you hold a couple of registrations, and I believe that was one of the things, I guess, that made LedgerX quite attractive. Maybe kindly break down to us some of these registrations. I know you have a DCM, DCO, and SEF registrations. Maybe you can give us a breakdown of what all these mean, and how they also how they come into play with LedgerX.
Sure. So I mean, I guess for the license of LedgerX, basically overall it's a derivative trading license, but there's two things basically you need in the derivative trading space. One is like you need license to do settlement, right? This is something you need to do. The other is trading. So LedgerX got both of the license, and so LedgerX is not only able to offer the product by by themselves, but they are also able to do settlement for other business. LedgerX do have the customer and who's using the settlement service of LedgerX. So basically there's two things LedgerX offers. The first is Bitcoin trading, Bitcoin option trading platform. The other is the settlement. So that's basically two things. And the other business LedgerX have is also Ledger Prime, which is also a fund which can do investment and also trading cryptocurrency. So that's basically the structure of the LedgerX business, and they're getting the license from CFTC. So that's.
Now, speaking of institutional adoption of crypto and what's happening, have you been involved in that as well? And what would you say about institutional trading versus retail trading and where both are going?
Good question. I guess, because we do participate in a couple of products like Grayscale. So we buy, ETHE and also ETCG, these kind of, Grayscale product. I think that offer a pretty good channel so far for the mainstream investor or institutional investor to make the investment in the crypto industry. So I mean, as I mentioned before, the regulation is still at the early stage. I would say, and it's very hard for the these kind of giant player manage trillions of dollars to invest into Bitcoin directly. I mean, there's like very smart people move pretty quickly, like Elon Musk or AKR Capital, and these kind of people, they move pretty quickly. But still, there's much bigger giant fund like Fidelity, like other like BlackRock and other big like kind of asset management company or family office, or like kind of like Bridgewater or this kind of trading fund. I mean, it's very hard for them to buying Bitcoin directly. I mean, for a company like SpaceX or like Tesla, they can do that, but for the fund, it's highly regulated. It's very hard for them to do. So Grayscale actually have a product which they can they are just basically they're just buying Bitcoin, right? But they are buying the security version of Bitcoin, which is a super good kind of a channel for the institutional investor and moving to the industry and making investment. But if you take a look at the cap table of Grayscale, especially for the Bitcoin Trust and also Ethereum Trust, there are still very few mainstream funds on the cap table. There are a few early movers, but really compared to the whole financial industry and the institutional investor, this is really a small number, very few number. So I guess still very there are Bitcoin, Ether, and the crypto industry overall, they have very large potential in the future to grow when the much bigger mainstream capital moving this industry, using Grayscale. In the future, maybe SEC approve the listing of ETFs that will bring more kind of money coming to the space to buying cryptocurrency. So still, so far, I guess, what I guess is this bull market is still a retail driven bull market. There's a few early movers from giant player already invest and they're buying cryptocurrency. But I guess, this is still a retail driven market. But for the next stage, when the ETF get listed or other, regulation or other policy getting more mature, then we will see more mainstream capital moving to the industry. So that at that time, it will be a much different story, and we will see more institutional investor investing into the industry and push the price of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency to a much higher price. So that is my thoughts on this question.
In your opinion, how soon do you see an ETF being approved? I think we've been waiting for quite some time. Do you see that happening anytime soon?
It's hard to predict, right? But I guess it will be somewhere between a year or two. I mean, I would say it's unlikely for us to see this getting approved in the 6 months. I mean, it's also unlikely for us to see this getting approved like 5 years later. I guess somewhere between a year or two make more sense for the industry, and I guess SEC will probably do that.
Now, circling back to the FTX acquisition, maybe do you mind giving us a bit of insight on how that went about? Maybe your conversations with some of or possibly how it came about. Possibly also, would you mind telling us specifically what they saw with the LedgerX, and they found that this would really be a good acquisition for them, especially at this time where, you know, they're doing quite a lot in terms of partnerships and acquisitions?
Yeah, sure. Happy to share a little bit more. I guess, you know, um, from the angle of FTX and Sam, I mean, you know, I think he already mentioned to the media a lot before his plan for this year, later this year, is really focused on expanding the market to US. I mean, could be probably the most important kind of vision or strategic kind of direction for FTX later this year. So, which I think it's definitely right, and absolutely the right choice to do. I think US is probably the single largest market. I mean, how does FTX say that they are not going there, right? So I guess this is definitely the right direction. But when they see about, you know, the things they are doing in the industry, I mean, you know, it's definitely regulated by CFTC. So the best outcome, if you apply a new license, I won't say no, but it will be super hard for you to get a new license. Basically, you know, if CFTC is very cautious about approving the new license. So there's only 5 right now: CME, backed, LedgerX, Binomial, and RSX. So it's very hard for the CFTC to issue the new license. So when my understanding is when Sam take a look at this, it's probably better for him to move much quicker and acquire one company definitely with the license, right? And when they talk to us and basically LedgerX is, I guess, you know, we also, you know, for LedgerX, not only about it's like it has the full license, but also, I mean, the financial data and also the team, I think it's really strong. So Sam actually, you know, like that a lot. I mean, we got a very strong team led by Zach, and we have a pretty good financial data, and it's been profitable like this year. So I guess, you know, when he take a look at this, it make a lot of sense for him to acquire not only a license with nothing, but also with the excellent team operating this license and operating this product already being profitable. So that's something, you know, Sam might be pretty excited about. And then he gave the offer, then we discussed a little bit, then we settled down the deal, I guess, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and then the deal has been announced. So I guess, you know, it's a pretty, I would say, smooth process overall, and I really like the idea of Sam moving forward, and the style of Sam just doing things pretty quickly. So that's, you know, that's a little bit background I can share about the LedgerX deal. Thanks.
All right. Yeah, I think that's good enough. Again, I think congratulations on that. I think it was a pretty good move as well for FTX. And so now, James, as we close this discussion, maybe I would like to sort of get your opinion on you know, the crypto space right now. There's so much happening. NFTs, the boom, the DeFi space. You know, we are still yet to see that mainstream adoption in the crypto space. We know it's coming, but, you know, we really are not sure when. Maybe can you let us know how do you see this space, both short term and long term, you know, as we await this mainstream adoption?
Yeah, great question. I think first is already, you know, as I mentioned above, it's about policy. When they're on the capital side, it's about policy. When policy become much like the ETF, then capital will move into the industry and support the industry. So that's one thing that I think will definitely generate more attraction for the mainstream investor and moving to the industry and adoption. The second is about technology. I guess, you know, for the infrastructure, Ethereum is moving to 2.0. Bitcoin is stable. Ethereum moving to 2.0. You can Solana already came to work. Polkadot will probably do the parachute option later this year. So you will see like a lot of mainstream protocols still working on making the technology better. So, I mean, Ethereum 2.0 is probably the most important milestone for the area of proof of stake really come to reality, right? So I guess, you know, when these kind of projects have a much mature ecosystem, you know, base layer technology, then you will see a much better ecosystem in the future. So that is also a sense that, once Bitcoin have the adoption because the technology of Bitcoin is pretty stable. So I guess, once the technology is mature, there will be mainstream capitals invest not only Bitcoin, but also Ether and other mainstream proof of stake layer of cryptocurrency. I think that's another thing is about technology. The third is really about, the end user application. I mean, we have, DeFi is, kind of like I guess, in the future, there will be more interaction between the DeFi world and the traditional centralized financial world. There'll be more interaction and see how fit into each other. That will definitely bring more people in the DeFi world. But to be honest, DeFi is a little bit hard to enter for the retail to enter because, for a retail investor or people, then, it's very hard for them to understand what is the protocol and the mechanism behind it. So it's very, a professional thing. So, but on an institutional investor level, they can dig into all the details, understand the logic, and have more interaction. So DeFi interact with DeFi is actually the next trend of one, one level of end user application, which will probably bring more people into the industry. The second, the end user application, the other is NFT. NFT is, I guess, basically you are changing the ways of people to think about the value of, for example, like art. Right, previously you need holder art paintings by a famous artist, then they have value. But once you put it on an NFT side, on a blockchain, then it become an NFT. It's totally a new style or new version of art. It's actually changed people's understanding about it. So it's all on the metaverse as well. People maybe spending maybe 4 hours, 5 hours a day being in the metaverse. So it's changing the style of people's, ordinary life. So already this kind of like a revolution on the NFT side in the long term will definitely have more adoption from mainstream, and giving people will understand this is something makes sense. I definitely can come into industries throughout that. So, and gaming as well. Previously you can only play game, but right now you can play to earn. So it's on the NFT side, it's so good and so big and so easy for people to enter into these sectors and changing the style of people's daily life. So actually, this is something I think I will mention also to the second part of the end user application that will change the whole things and make sure a lot of investors will come into the space. So that is my conclusion about three aspects will have the most impact: the policy side, bringing capital, the technology, basically the technology, and the end user application.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you as well for closing our discussion in a really nice way. And thank you for speaking to us as well, James.
Thank you, David. I appreciate for you taking time and join the call.
Thank you.